Hello everybody, this week on the blog I'm going to do something a little bit different from what I usually do and probably something which I'm not going to do a lot of in the future, but today I'd like to talk about politics. So the reason that I want to talk about this interesting, complex but not particularly fun subject is because here in the UK in about 3 days time we have got a general election, which means on the 12th of December all of us get to go to the polls, cast our vote and decide who we would rather have as our new leaders here in government. It's probably not unfair to say that this December 12th will be one of the most controversial elections that's ever been held in the UK. There's the incumbent Conservative Party that have got a lot of issues and flaws. There's the Labour Party, which has also been a lot written about them, who are the current opposition. Then there's other parties like the Greens, Lib Dems. So there's lots of choice and lots of options. There's two reasons really that I wanted to make this blog. One, because I think it's very important to actually talk about politics. I never used to think it was that important. In fact, I never even used to vote. Now I'm quite a bit more vocal about it. And I think it's important that I try and do something to put my views across and explain to people in hopefully the best and calmest, most rational way I can why I think it's really important that people go and vote. And I'll make I'll call a spade and not mince things about why I think it's really important that you don't vote for the Conservative Party. Basically, that's where I am with this, and I'll just put it there from the outset. The second reason that I wanted to do this as a video blog is because politics has become a really divisive thing in this country, and I think a lot of people who are actually in power want it to be a divisive thing. They want people to argue and squabble. There's the idea of divide and conquer, which Julius Caesar came up with, which has been touted as one of the main problems that there is with Brexit and with other such very divisive, contentious political issues. Through lots of discussions and debate on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and other things like that, I've actually myself come across as a bit of a foghorn, as a bit loutish, a bit unpleasant really to people. I've come across, I know, as being very, well, this is my opinion, therefore if you don't agree with it, you're wrong. And I want to take this opportunity to apologise for that, because I've actually, I can definitely see there's friends. There aren't many friends of mine that are further on the right as opposed to the majority of me and my friends who are mostly on the left. But I do have some, and I can see that I don't talk to them as much anymore. And when we have ever talked about politics, it's been pretty contentious. But going through things like Facebook and social media, there's this whole idea of being keyboard warriors, this idea of you can say whatever you want on the internet and it doesn't matter. And I myself have said some really unpleasant and unfair things to people. So I am just as bad as anyone else is what I'm getting across here. But I think it's more important, it is important to say the things that you believe in, but I think it's often important to actually say them when you can see my face and how I'm actually thinking about things and how I'm reacting to things. And also, I think it's really important for me and for a lot of other people to try and foster an idea of there was always the idea that you should respect other people's views and policies and stuff, however abhorrent they may be. Nelson Mandela is obviously a perfect example of this, someone who said, we must try and meet in the middle and have mutual reconciliation on things. And as brutal as I have been talking to people who vote Conservative or voted for Brexit or anything else like that, I'm trying my best to turn over a new leaf and meet people in the middle, which is an example that's being set at the moment by Jeremy Corbyn, I think, really well. So with this blog, what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to talk about three main things that are going to be coming up in the election. And I've already brought up in all the campaigning right now, but these are the three main things that I think are really important reasons why you shouldn't vote for the Conservatives and why you probably should vote for the Labour Party, unless you're in one of those marginal seats where possibly voting for the Liberal Democrats would get them in. I'm actually in Falmouth, so voting for Labour is the tactical vote here for me, despite what the Liberal Democrats may be trying to say. and which has meant I don't have much of a moral dilemma in terms of voting tactically or voting with my actual conscience. But hopefully, wherever you are around the country, if you have a chance to vote tactically, that seems to be the thing that most people are trying to suggest doing. But either way, this isn't about tactical voting. This is about morality, really, and why I think it's important to go and vote and why I think it's important not to vote for the Conservative Party. So there are three main reasons, I think, which are why the Conservatives shouldn't get your vote on December the 12th. And the first reason, we'll just storm straight in with it, is Brexit. Brexit is probably the least favourite word of anybody in this country at the moment, even for people that voted for a hard Brexit, quote unquote. The reason for this is why you shouldn't vote for the Conservative Party, even with Boris Johnson saying, oh yes, I'm going to get Brexit done, blah, 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 whatever like that. The main reason is, and this is the thing, again, I'm trying to meet everyone in the middle, and I know a lot of people who are like, Brexit means Brexit. I know a lot of people who are like, out means out, and that's what we've got to do. But when you actually get down to it and look at it, and you actually want to, if you actually want to talk about democracy, then probably Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party are your best bet. Because when you look at what the actual others are offering, Boris Johnson is basically saying that he is going to listen only and exclusively to the 52% who voted out. That's his idea of the will of the people. Now, of those 52%, and this has gone over and over and over again and again and again, of those 52% of people, a lot of those people in the last 3 years, since 3.5 years really, since the referendum in 2016, a lot of those people have changed their mind. A lot of people have said, well, I wanted to leave, but you promised that we would be able to leave with a deal. I think Boris Johnson said it would be the easiest deal that had ever been struck, which now is turning out to be fictitious and untrue. On the other side of things, you have the Liberal Democrats who are saying that they're going to cancel Brexit, which is basically listening only to the 48%. So you've got Boris just listening to the 52, you've got the Liberal Democrats just listening to the 48. Now, neither of these really are exactly saying we're going to support the will of the people. Neither of them are being really very democratic. Because when it comes down to it, and I know there's lots of Brexiteers out there who aren't going to like this, but it is the simple truth. It's been a shit show from the start. All right? David Cameron deserves to be put in stocks and have children pelt him with rotten vegetables for the absolute mess that he left. He really does. The question itself wasn't, should we leave the European Union? Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean we should block up the Channel Tunnel? Does that mean we should sink all of our ferries? Are we going to build a wall around Great Britain and never have contact with anyone else? Is that what it means? And if not, if you're saying, oh, well, that's ridiculous, then think about how I feel trying to talk about Brexit from the other side of things, okay? Again, I'm not trying to say, oh, you're stupid, you're idiots, or anything else like that, but please, it's desperately hard to understand what it is that people actually wanted from the Brexit vote. What it was they really actually desired to happen. And do you know what? I know a lot of hard Brexiteers, and even most of them don't seem to agree with one another. So what is the solution? Genuinely, I don't think cancelling Brexit's a very good idea. I think that's going to piss off a lot of people, and rightly so it should. People did vote for something, okay? But we need to know more specifically what it is. And that is why Labour are proposing that we have a people's vote. So we go back to the people's vote and we go back to people and say, right, it's 3 years later, a lot of stuff's changed, there's been a fair few new developments. We'll put Remain on the table as an option, and we'll see what you think about that. Then we'll say, here's an idea for a deal. Or, and I think they're even saying, we'll put no deal on the table. We'll say, if the majority vote, no deal, and they'll make it, hopefully, I hope to God, they make it much more clear this time round. Because even one of the things that I've seen a lot of recently is people saying about how the actual vote itself might not be legally binding because it was an advisory vote rather than an actual, it wasn't a piece of legislation or anything like that. So if you do really want to get Brexit done, in spite of what you may read in the papers, Labour are actually your best bet, because Boris has proved many times over, or the Conservative Party under the stewardship of both Theresa May and Boris Johnson have proved that they can't get Brexit done. So if you want to get Brexit done, really, then yeah, go for Labour. Now, the one thing that I will say is that if you then don't want to vote for Labour, having listened to all I've just said, and if you decide that you still think, no, there shouldn't be a second referendum because that's undemocratic, okay, then yeah, you're being a child. Really, and I'm trying to say that in as nice a possible way as I can. But if you think that there shouldn't be another vote, one that's more specific, that gives us more detailed information about what it is, then all that you are hoping is that we will stick somehow to the slim majority of the original vote, because you want to leave no matter what. And you don't actually want to listen to everyone else in the country. You just want to keep this somehow deceitful victory and push that through. And that's not fair on anybody. Okay, so we can all agree that Brexit is a bit of a clusterfuck, but let's move on to something else that hopefully should be a little bit closer to everyone else, which is austerity. Austerity, if you don't know or don't really get what it is a Conservative policy that was implemented when the Conservatives took power 9 years ago in order to try and balance the deficit of the budget, which was caused essentially by the banking crisis from 2008 onwards. If you don't understand the banking crisis, basically, in a nutshell, as the best of my understanding, here's what happens. A load of banks around the world were really, really reckless. They invested in lots of things like subprime debt. When all of these bad deals that they made went really, really catastrophically bad, mainly in the United States, but also across the world, Iceland got hit particularly hard. Places like here in the UK, we got hit pretty hard by it as well. When all the bad deals went bad, the banks went to the government and said, you have to bail us out. And the bailouts were enormous. We're talking trillions of pounds worth of money. And the government went, sure, we'll bail you out. But of course, the government's money only comes from one place, us. So we, the taxpayer, essentially bailed out the banks so that they could continue to act recklessly and dangerously with all of our money, our pensions, our savings, our mortgages, everything else. And most of them still do. And this is why you will see many banks now still lobbying against political banking reform, so that they do not have to listen to any kind of laws or legislations or ideas about how they should act, and they should basically, they believe they should be able to do whatever they want. Okay, I'm going off a little bit of a tangent here. This is not about banking, this is about austerity. Basically, the global market crashed in 2008 to 2010 because there was a lot of reckless deals going on. Also, the last Labour government, which is not the same as the new Labour government, let's make that very clear. Tony Blair, Jeremy Corbyn, very different people. Jeremy Corbyn, socialist that grows his own vegetables. Tony Blair, mass murdering fuckhead. The Labour Party, the previous Labour Party, waded us into quite a few illegal wars, including Iraq and Afghanistan, which cost quite a lot of money. If you hadn't noticed, tanks and bulletproof vests and AWACS and things like that all cost quite a lot of money. So yeah, by the time we'd got to the end of 2008, 2009, 2010, banking crisis, wars, everything else, as the last very cavalier Labour government said, there is no money left. And there really wasn't. So what do we do about this? The incoming Conservative Party, now bear in mind the outgoing Labour Party were basically Tories in sheep's clothing is the best way of describing them. So the incoming Conservative Party then go, right, well, we're going to implement what's called austerity. The austerity measures basically said we're going to cut everything. And I mean everything. They're going to cut, and I, at the time, in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2010 and 2011, I was working for a students' union, and this was the time when £3,000 fees for higher education were scrapped and replaced with £9,000 fees, and that was just the start of it. Education cut. I mean, and that's very sad. You know, university students having to pay £27,000 a year. Yeah, boo-hoo. We still got student loans and we're still all covered and stuff. That was fine. The real hardships that came after that were, real cuts to schools and education, where you now have schools writing begging letters to parents to try and give them more funding so that they can buy some books for their children. There's further acts of austerity outside of education, everything from the Department of Health and Welfare. So there's been all the news and stories about people who have been declared fit for work. There's this horrible fit for work. It's not even really a scandal. It's like a war crime, basically. People's pensions, people's disability benefits, all of these things have been cut. Transport, public services, bus routes have been taken away. And then the real essential things on our streets, nurses, doctors, paramedics, police officers, all of these things have just been absolutely cut, all these public services. Now, what this has done is basically left the country on its knees. And the Conservatives always say, you know, we're just cleaning up the mess that the last Labour Party left. The problem is there's still a lot of millionaires and billionaires living quite wealthily and happily, whilst at the same time, the homelessness in this country has increased by 165% in the last 9 years. There are 165% more homeless people than there were 10 years ago. That's not a figure that we should be looking at in the fifth most wealthy country in the world. There should not be 14.3 million people in poverty in one of the most wealthy countries in the world. There just shouldn't. Now, I've been very lucky. In the last 10 years, I've been very lucky. I've started a couple of businesses and I've done quite well for myself. I certainly haven't been able to buy a house, and I'm not investing in any kind of investments or anything like that, apart from the ones in my own businesses. I've been quite lucky, but that doesn't mean that other people haven't. Other people have been hit incredibly hard by austerity. Other people have lost homes, they've lost lives. People have died because of austerity. That's not hyperbole, that's the truth. It's been really hard and really unpleasant for a lot of people. Now, a lot of people are then going to go, well, if you're just advocating socialism where everyone's just going to lay about and do nothing, then that's not an alternative. Well, that's not what socialists suggest and say. If anyone's ever read The Ragged Trousered Philanthropists, it's a really great book. I'm going to put a link in the description below. It's a great book by a guy called Robert Tressel about these guys who are painters and decorators who all end up discussing the government and everything else. And they're one of the main guys in the story, a guy called Owens, talks a lot about socialism and how it's not what a lot of people seem to think or what the mainstream media says it is. And they talk a lot about how money is actually the cause of poverty. And really it is. Money, is this great big trap that's been designed. And the reason it is such is because when you look at the world now, there's sort of two great equations that we have to balance up. One is essentially how much is an hour of someone's labour and time worth? And the other thing is, what can they buy with what you pay them for that? Now, we have a set amount of work that needs to be done in the world. And at the moment, we have pretty high levels of unemployment, whatever the Conservative Party may say when they say, oh, these people are employed, when they're actually on 0-hour contracts and work less than 2 hours a week. We have real big problems at the moment in terms of unemployment. And it seems bizarre to me. I know it's complex. I know that economics is a real big issue. But when it comes down to it, if you want people to be working, then you have to take away some of the work from other people in order to make up for the shortfall. That's just it. When it comes down to it, if there's not enough jobs to go around, if there's not enough actual labour that needs to be done, then, well, that means the people who are working 5 days a week, maybe they need to just be working 4 days a week and shuffle some of those days around and give them to some of the other people who aren't working. And then people go, wow, but then they're going to lose out wages and stuff. Well, just raise their wages. And then people go, but that's going to be an effect on the cost of buying things afterwards. So no, it's never going to work. Well, we created this idea in the first place. We all used to work on Saturdays. We all used to work much, much harder than we do now. And socialism doesn't say that everyone should be able to lay about on their arses. And socialism also doesn't actually say that there shouldn't be millionaires and billionaires. Should Bill Gates be able to have a mansion and a private island and a 10 cars in the driveway and everything else like that? Yeah, you know, he's made a pretty significant impact in the world. That's fair enough. Do you know what I think Bill Gates doesn't need? Bill Gates may now have the ability, should have the ability to be able to buy 10 cars if he wants to. Well done. I don't think he needs the ability to buy 1 million cars. And that's what it comes down to. Okay, then forget Bill Gates. Look at Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos, who is actually one of the, is a big employer of people in his Amazon warehouses and everything else like that. Yet the people at the bottom are struggling to make ends meet. That can't possibly be right. When he has the ability to buy countries with his own personal wealth, not even the wealth of his company, which is stratospheric compared to his own personal wealth. Socialism only ever really says that people shouldn't struggle. That's it. We live in an amazing time of technological supremacy. We went to the moon 50 years ago, for goodness sake. We've made amazing things. We've built great big things. We've conquered the planet. We've done everything that we can. There shouldn't be people starving. There shouldn't be people out on the streets. And if that means that a few billionaires and millionaires, and in fact, people over £85,000 annual income each year, if they have to pay a little bit extra, just a little bit extra, then if you don't think that that's a price worth paying, just to get everyone onto the same level playing field of having a roof over their head and food on their plate in front of them, then I think we have fundamental problems there. The world does exist around exploiting the lower classes and the poor and the working classes so that the rich can be wealthy. And you know what? I don't think the rich shouldn't be rich. I don't think the wealthy shouldn't be wealthy. And in ways, I don't think that privilege should be something that... I don't think that privileged people shouldn't be privileged. I just think that the scales at the moment are tipped so far in the opposite direction. I mean, what do people need all that money for? Really? So that's why, one of the reasons, I'll be voting Labour on December 12th. Because I'd like to be rich one day, but I wouldn't like it to be at everyone else's loss. I think it's that simple. All right, the last thing that's on the list, and possibly the most important thing, I think, the NHS, the National Health Service, which has been held up as a model of amazing health delivery for people all over the world. Everyone is in envy of the National Health Service. It's one of the few things that we still do really well. And amazingly, the National Health Service is still doing as well as it can, despite immense amount of Tory cuts. So the Tories, as we said in the last little segment about austerity, the things they've cut the most really has been the NHS. And there's been a lot going around recently about whether the NHS is going to become privatised under the Conservatives. And there's people saying, no, we're not going to do that. But I'm pretty sure the Conservatives also said they weren't going to nationalise mining, they weren't going to privatise mining, they weren't going to privatise railroads and everything else like that. They said they weren't going to privatise the post office. And yeah, funnily enough, they lied about that. And when you look at the National Health Service and people say, oh, they're never going to privatise that, they wouldn't ever do that. And this is the thing. One of the greatest principles of all of this is people going, it'll never happen. Because it's never happened in someone's own lifetime. They can't believe it's ever going to happen to them now. But it is happening. There are huge private deals going on where the NHS is being very carefully strip-mined and sold off to private companies. Richard Branson suing the NHS. What is that even all about? That's crazy. And Donald Trump has made it very, very clear that he would like the NHS. And people say, the US and the UK, they've just talked about it. Why are they even talking about it? Why are they even talking about the idea that the NHS should be for sale? We have built it up over 50 years of our taxes and our time and our hard work from our incredibly skilled and wonderful people from here in the UK and also people who have come from abroad to work in the NHS for us here. And it is an amazing thing and it works. That's the best thing about it. A lot of people go, how can there just be this free health service? It costs billions of pounds a year to run the NHS. Yeah, but we made it work. So leave it alone. That's what it comes down to. Just leave it alone. All right? And you know what? People say, "Oh, there's all these benefit tourists coming over from, other countries to get free healthcare in the NHS." Do you know how much that affects me on a day-to-day basis, or you, or anyone else, or the NHS in general? It doesn't, basically. It is such a drop in the ocean. People coming to get some free paracetamol, even if they get a free boob job in the NHS, I don't care. So long as when I break my back, I can get free healthcare, I'm fine with that. And if that means my taxes cost a little, I don't pay a lot of taxes at the moment, I'll be honest with you. That's because I don't earn a lot at the moment. But I wouldn't mind paying a little bit more if it made the NHS still work. But the thing is, my taxes aren't the problem. It's the taxes of massive multinational corporations who avoid paying their taxes in large scales. And again, this is the thing, I'm not anti-business, I'm not anti-corporations. I use Amazon for selling my books and things like that. I use Amazon all the time. I drink Starbucks coffee, all this kind of thing like that. These things are great, they are wonderful. But they just need to pay their goddamn taxes. That's what it comes down to. Just pay your taxes. But coming back to the NHS, a lot of people think, well, in America, they don't have healthcare. And it's not that bad. Well, it is. For a start, I think a lot of people don't realise how big America really is. Because you see on America, we see lots of Hollywood, we see lots of New York, we see lots of things on television and TV, and we see the glitz and the glam and all the lovely stuff like that. You don't then realise there are over 300 million people in America. Alright, it's not as big as China or India, but it's still big. 300 million. Now, how many people in America do you think are in debt or facing hardship because of medical bills? 137 million. 137 million people in 2018 experienced hardship or loss as a result of trying to pay their medical bills. Now that's a big number. That's almost half of the population of America suffered hardship and or loss because they couldn't pay their medical bills. You want an even more scary number? 45,000 people died in 2018 because they couldn't afford healthcare. Because they couldn't afford insurance and therefore couldn't afford to actually get the medical treatment that they needed. 45,000 people are dead. That's double the population of Falmouth. How is that a number that we just casually ignore? I mean, yes, greater atrocities happen around the world, no question about that. Things that are happening in North Korea, genocides that happen everywhere, they are terrible. But that is still a number. In one of the wealthiest countries in the world, 45,000 people died because they couldn't get healthcare. And some of those will have been for relatively minor things at the start. And that is potentially the future for us here. Healthcare costs that would just spiral through the roof. And I've been reading lots on the kind of costs that are involved if you privatise healthcare. It can cost you upwards of £10,000 to have a baby. Okay? And when people say, well, you shouldn't have a baby if you can't afford to have one. Yeah, I find that quite a tricky argument because the people that usually say that are the ones that generally profit from there being a large population of people to work and run all the machines and stuff. So when you say to people, well, poor people can't have babies anymore, yeah, if you say that poor people can't have babies anymore, you're going to have a lot of trouble in about 30 years when you realise you've got no people to run the country. So that's a bit of a defunct argument. But either way, privatising healthcare will be a very expensive and very painful and very unpleasant thing for a lot of people. I certainly would struggle to get healthcare insurance. I have psoriasis, which is a pre-existing condition. I have numerous broken bones. My partner has a couple of different health conditions. I know lots of people that have pre-existing medical health conditions that would potentially restrict them from getting health insurance and therefore health care under a privatised system. That is not a world that we should live in. And it comes back, always, it comes back to the same thing, which is that people should be able to climb higher than others in society. People should be able to make millions and be successful and be superstars and stuff like that. there just shouldn't be these people at the bottom who have to die because they can't afford to live. That's such an incredibly bizarre thing. We built society and civilization on the principle that we didn't all like sleeping in the woods. We didn't all like sleeping in caves, getting cold and wet and dying of pneumonia and stuff like that. And now we're saying that some people are more or less worthy of the basics, the very basics of civilization and the privileges therefore. That shouldn't be right. That isn't right. And when it comes down to it, what does it really come down to? If you have nationalised health, if you have nationalised housing, if you have all of these things that are just provided for people to let everyone start on the ground level at the same point, where you've got a roof over your head, you've got free healthcare, you've got free education, people say, oh, well, where's all that money going to come from? Well, at one point or another throughout the last 100 years, all of those things have been free. There's no reason we can't do it now. And how much will it affect millionaires and billionaires in the end? Really? Not very much. And that's what really gets me about the Conservative Party and people that want to vote for it. Because when you look at the actual reasons, you have to stop and go, the reasons are so small. The reasons are so insignificant. The effect on a millionaire or a billionaire's life in paying a few extra % in their taxes would make so little difference to their actual lives. Why is it they don't want to do it? It worries me that they might actually just be mass psychosis and that people actually really just want people to die. It's a really scary thing to come out on and think about that. But yeah, so that's the NHS, which we really would rather not privatise. So those are my main 3 reasons why on December the 12th I won't be voting for the Tories, and I really sincerely hope that you don't either. Genuinely, if you're thinking of going and voting for them and you're one of my friends, please come and talk to me about it. Like, I genuinely want to hear your opinions, because if I'm wrong, like, I want to know. I really do. But please don't just try and tell me what's wrong with Jeremy Corbyn. Tell me what's right about Boris Johnson. Tell me what's right about the Conservative Party. Tell me what is right about pushing a hard Brexit when there's no mandate for that. Tell me what's right about 14.3 million people in poverty and 165% homelessness. Tell me what's right about that. Tell me what's right about austerity. Tell me what is right about privatising the National Health Service and education and housing and everything else. Tell me what is right about that. Tell me what is right about billionaires getting tax breaks whilst people may potentially have to decide whether they can, live. Tell me what's right about that. I'm really interested. But if you can't, and if you got to the end of this video, thank you for watching, and you're wondering who you should vote for, I can only say again, I think the Conservative Party is really doing some serious damage to this country, and they're only going to do more. And by the time a lot of us realise the damage that they've done, it's probably going to be too late. So, yeah, that's all I've got. There's a lot of movement at the moment about tactical voting. It's definitely worth going and researching and looking up who the tactical vote in your area is. A lot of people, even former Conservative Prime Ministers like John Major, are saying that you should tactically vote to get the Tories out, and that's a terrifying kind of thing. It'd be amazing to see, as people have talked about getting Ouija boards out to try and contact Margaret Thatcher and see what she thinks of the whole debacle. It's pretty crazy. But I'll try and end on a good note, and I think the good note is Jeremy Corbyn has had a lot of mud thrown at him from a lot of angles. I have yet to hear anything that's substantial or true about why he's such a terrible person. And people say he's a terrorist sympathiser. He's not. People say he's an anti-Semite. He's not. I'm not even going to go into all the reasons why he isn't. He just isn't. You can do the research on your own time. I've explained it to enough people as it is. I do not think Jeremy Corbyn is perfect. I don't think he's someone I'd like to particularly go and have a pint with or hang out. I don't identify with him in a lot of ways. But he does seem like a genuinely good, decent human being that really wants the betterment for all. He doesn't want to take away millionaires' millions and billionaires' billions. He doesn't want to take all that money away from people. He just wants people to pay their fair share. And he wants people who are really struggling at the bottom, people who could just do with a little bit of extra help to get by. He wants to help those people. If you don't, I really struggle to understand why. When it affects you so little, and the benefits of voting for the Conservative Party would also be so minuscule. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I genuinely think Jeremy Corbyn seems to be someone who's got his head screwed on, who has tried his hardest to make good things happen, to bring about real, social, effective change. Because when it comes down to it, we have really big problems in the world. And those big problems, things like climate change, are only going to be solved by educating people, by caring for people, by fixing the problems we have in ourselves first, before we try and fix the bigger problems out there. Can you imagine how amazing the world would be if everyone got the same education of a high level? You know, that would solve that's investment. That would solve so many problems. Can you imagine what it would be like if no one was homeless? If there was at least somewhere for everyone to go and have a dry, warm bed for the night? Yeah, I'd certainly feel better. I wouldn't feel so guilty walking down the street thinking I'm not doing enough. There's an amazing opportunity for us as a country on the 12th of December. And I think we all have a duty to try our best with it. And yeah, there's a group of people I haven't mentioned, which is those of you who just don't want to vote on principle. And I'm with you. I think I used to be someone who was like, voting for anyone is just stupid because it's all rigged, it's all fixed, it's all just, they're all the same. Whoever you vote for, you get the government. I hear you, I absolutely do. I used to think like that for a very long time. And then I realised it was a really sad way for me to think about things. Because then you just end up not trusting anybody. And you've got to lay it down somewhere. And you know what? If the Labour Party had produced another Ed Miliband, or if they produced another Tony Blair, I probably wouldn't even be making this video, and we'd probably be like, oh well, it's just as bad as they are all as bad as each other. But Labour have for once actually produced someone who seems like a fundamentally decent human being and might actually do some good in the world. And by the world, I mean the majority of people. So yeah, that's all I got. Don't forget, December the 12th, please go and vote. Please don't vote for the Tories. Thank you.